if the Tory party just continues to have a slightly mad philosophical discussion about where they should go, the public are not interested in that. The public are interested in delivery and what are you actually going to do for me? I think Andy Street is right. I've always said you only win elections from the centre, and the Tory party only ever does well when it's fighting in the centre ground. It doesn't do well when it's going to the kind of hard right. So I don't think the Conservative Party should be distracted by reform, which did very badly in these council elections, didn't make any impact at all. It does not look like the coming force to take a big chunk of Conservative votes.
For our top story today, of course, the results are nearly all in from the local elections, capping off a bruising few days for the Conservatives. The party has lost nearly 500 seats and control of 10 councils. Last night, it lost a key mayoral election in the West Midlands when the Conservative incumbent Andy Street was ousted by his Labour challenger Richard Parker. So, what does this mean for the Tories' chances in the next general election? And perhaps, more concerningly, for Rishi Sunak for his own position as party leader? Well, joining me now is Conservative peer and Time Radio's very own Ed Vaizey. Ed, thank you for giving us your time on this Sunday bank holiday.
You're welcome.
Ed,
Sunday lunch can wait.
Sunday, look, I promise I'll let you get to the Sunday lunch as quickly as possible. But Ed, tell me a bit about what's going on in the Conservative Party today. It seems that this sort of the rebellion, should the local election results go badly, has sort of died down, even though Suella Braverman today has had some strong words, but not really much challenging there.
Well, I think the Conservative Party has realised that obviously it's got itself stuck and it doesn't really know what it wants to do. So on the one hand, there are lots of people who think that if they change their leader, Rishi Sunak, they'll suddenly create a miracle. They're delusional, in my view. But they also probably realise that there's no one else who could possibly step in that's going to transform the Conservative Party's fortunes. We've had various names go around the block. But one name that does crop up is Boris Johnson, and that's very unrealistic given that he's not even a member of parliament at the moment. So once you've worked out that you can't get rid of Rishi Sunak, or that if you did, you'd still be stuck, I think you are at that point just resigned to your fate and you expect to lose the next election. And your philosophy is, how can we lose less badly than we might expect? And there might be some comfort in the local election results, disastrous though they were. We know that this analysis of the local elections by Colin Thrasher, the sort of election guru, shows that Labour is not as far ahead as it might be to secure an outright majority. So that will give Conservative MPs some hope that if they put up a united front and actually present a effective government for the next 6 months, they might make some way back. Even though Andy Street lost his election, he lost by a wafer-thin margin, considering how many people vote in the West Midlands. And again, that's not natural Tory territory to have a Tory mayor even elected, let alone come so close to being re-elected. So that will give them some comfort. And then, of course, the Ben Houchen result, rather like our results in Westminster and Wandsworth back in the 1990s when we were doing badly, would give us comfort, is another reason to give Tory MPs comfort. So there's enough for a Conservative MP to cling on to in the hope that it can be not a rout, but something like a fair fight in the next few months.
But do you think the next few months are going to be filled with the arguing within the Conservative Party of what we heard from someone like Andy Street, of course? Yesterday, he emphasised that the party needs to fight from the centre ground. And what we're hearing from Suella Braverman today, where she is saying that actually the party needs to go further to the right. So are we just going to be all stood by watching the Conservatives argue amongst themselves, whilst at the same time not quite knowing when that election is going to come?
Well, it's a very shrewd question, because first of all, I think you're right that if the Tory party just continues to have a slightly mad philosophical discussion about where they should go, the public are not interested in that. The public are interested in delivery and what are you actually going to do for me? I think Andy Street is right. I've always said you only win elections from the centre, and the Tory party only ever does well when it's fighting in the centre ground. It doesn't do well when it's going to the kind of hard right. So I don't think the Conservative Party should be distracted by reform, which did very badly in these council elections, didn't make any impact at all. It does not look like the coming force to take a big chunk of Conservative votes. The Conservative votes in the Red Wall are going to Labour or people are staying at home. The Tory party, therefore, should stay in the centre ground. There are two issues which potentially resonate where you could describe them as more centre-right than centre. One is tax cuts. And I think Jeremy Hunt the new narrative, which will develop in a few weeks, will be what is Jeremy Hunt's, what we call a fiscal event, going to be in the autumn. It will be a kind of made-up budget just before the election. It will be a budget that attempts to move the dial for the coming election, which I still, by the way, expect to be called in October and held in November. And the pressure will be on tax cuts. And that might well resonate. I'm not going to get into a discussion about whether it's the right policy or not, but in terms of grabbing a headline, that will be the push. And then the Rwanda policy, which is so problematic and difficult. We heard from people on the ground in local election results that the Rwanda policy had backfired, not because the public didn't necessarily support it, but because Rishi Sunak had made it so resonant and then not delivered on it, that it was kind of taken as totemic of a government failing to deliver. Now, this will sound odd from a centrist politician, but the Rwanda policy, weirdly, could come good. I don't want to stoke division or extremism, but it is the case that if Rishi Sunak, by some miracle, does get a flight off the ground in the next 2 or 3 months, he might be able to say, right, I've got this policy getting underway, and sure enough, the dog has barked as I'm in the middle of my interview.
Although the doorbell went off, Ed, so I think we can forgive the dog. Look, Ed, always a pleasure to speak to you. Whilst we've been on air, of course, there's been a text message come in saying Ed Vaizey for PM. There we go.
I wish my mother would stop texting your programme, Alexis, but she does love it.
Have a word. Ed, as always, a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much. I'll let you go and get your doorbell, and we'll speak soon.